of why we're doing these roundtables is to get to know everyone. And there are some just amazing people already in the room today. So I would like to just take an opportunity, if we could, to do a quick round of introductions, and then we will go ahead and kick off formally today. So Ashley, since you were the first one to join, you want to go first?
Sure, no problem. So I am Ashley Winkleman. I work at Signet Jewelers in our procurement department. I run our procurement operations area, which manages supplies and services and transportation for our stores and corporate facilities. And I got connected with Amanda back in February. So I think this is the third event that I've joined, but really excited to get more involved in this group.
Thank you, Ashley. And she works for one of my all-time favorite bosses, Brian Bancroft. So he's amazing so we're both lucky to have him in our lives. So Debbie, would you like to go next? I'm just going to go straight down the list.
Well, and I guess I'll turn on my video here. My name is Debbie Earnhardt, and I work for Jagger, and we are a very proud sponsor of this Zoom series. I tried to join the one last week, didn't get a chance to, so I'm here this week to support as well. Kathy Reynolds, who is one of my lifesavers in my procurement department. I'm basically in charge for North American marketing, field marketing events, you name it. And I work with Gabby, who I think is joining us today.
Yep. She just joined us, so she's here.
Hey, Gabby.
Running from meeting to meeting.
I figured so. Anyhow, I'll pass the torch.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, Cecilia.
Hi, everyone. I'm with ISM, and I am not a practitioner like you all. And I actually met Amanda one time when she was at our office pre-COVID. Yes. And I was following you on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh man, she's so amazing, but we didn't get a chance to actually talk. And so I just kind of watch you and comment and like and stuff. And I'm trying to learn more about the industry as practitioners and what's important to you. And I thought this is a great opportunity for me to just be a fly on the wall and listen. So thank you.
Thank you so much for joining. And I cannot wait to start traveling again and see everyone in person. So it's going to be so nice. Let's see, Brenda.
Hi.
Hi, Brenda.
I'm sorry I'm always glowing. I mean, it's like pouring down rain here. You'd think there would be nothing coming in through the windows, but.
Well, so welcome back, Brenda. Everybody. Yes. And let's see, Gabby, I'll skip over you for now. And I'll hand it over to you here in a second. Hannah.
I'm Hannah. I actually work with Debbie and Gabby. I am at Jagger. I'm a field marketing specialist. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to learn some things today.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Paula's a great friend. Hi, Paula.
Hi. Thanks so much for inviting me, Amanda. Hello, everyone. I am a leadership coach, and that's the first time I'm saying that in a public forum. I recently transitioned from the corporate world to my new journey of bliss, and I'm having a lot of fun. And one of the things I'm doing currently is I'm leading a workshop called Soul Sister Sundays about the art of saying no to say yes. So happy to be here.
That might come up today. I'm not sure, like in the art of asking questions. That's a good one. All right, Susan.
Hey ladies, hope you're well. I'm Susan Walsh. I'm the classification guru, fixer of dirty data. I'm very hot today, which I'm not complaining about because it's amazing. It's just sad I have to be working.
So Susan, it's going to be 114 in Vegas today.
Okay, I'll just be quiet now. I'm just in the corner and shut up. Although we don't do air conditioning over here, so when it happens, it's like
It's 118 supposedly today. The high in
Phoenix. In Phoenix, it's going to be incredible. The heat. So I think I might have missed Sarah Nelson, unless Sarah.
Hello,
yes,
you didn't miss me. I was Kirby. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Nelson. I'm what do I do? Other duties as assigned is primarily my job title. I work for Velocity Procurement, a consulting firm out of Philadelphia. We specialize in procurement transformation journeys. I head up change management and client-facing programs for delivery and other duties as assigned.
Mm.
And we're
A
hiring.
woman after my own heart. Ooh,
Yeah.
we should talk. Okay, so the objective of these sessions, we're getting together about once a month. I do want Jagger and everyone that's supporting us as a sponsor. We started talking about this several months ago, and we're like, we really want to provide a sense of community to women in procurement, to really connect with each other and to have open conversations about various topics that keep on coming up in other conversations. So of course, as part of GWPP, we're all about that. And so we're happy to be providing this forum to all of you and your friends and whoever else wants to join in. So they're meant to be informal, casual conversations, and to hopefully learn from each other. Also, never to feel alone. Like sometimes we feel like as women that we're the only ones going through something, or we're the only ones that have had this challenge. And that's absolutely not the case. We have so many wonderful women out there that have great experiences and who are willing to share. So just so happy that you all could join today. And I do want to hand it over to Gabby really quickly for some of her thoughts, and then we will dive right into the topic.
Thanks, Amanda. Really great to see some faces from last month, some new faces as well. I really enjoyed our conversation last month. Excited to do it again this month and to continue forward. I just found so much value in the conversation. And that's really what we're trying to do as a sponsor of this, is help build up a community, get people connected with each other, give people access to more resources. So excited to do it again today. And we have a guest moderator on from Jagger as well. We've got Kathy Reynolds, who is despite the fact that we are a procurement company, she is our one-woman procurement team. So she's going to kind of guide our discussion a little bit, throw some questions out there. But obviously, just like last time, if you have questions, if you have specific things you want to bring up, please bring them up. We're here for the next 60-ish minutes and excited to get into it.
Yeah, so thanks, Gabby. Yeah, the irony of a procurement software company with a single person in a procurement department, talk about feeling alone. You know, and Debbie was like, the team over in procurement, I was like, it's really just me. I've been with Jagger for a little over a year now. I started with them 2 weeks before the world shut down last March. So thankfully they held on tight to me, and we've been pushing through ever since, using our own product in a way that we'd never done before. So I had a lot of room to grow and make the internal processes work a little bit better for the team. So that's been pretty interesting. I've got 8 years in procurement. I work for indirect, direct, biotech companies. So I've purchased monkey blood before, which is completely bizarre. And now I'm buying, you know, software predominantly at Jagger. And with nobody in the offices, you know, not buying copiers and printers, and we don't need shredding services anymore. It's a whole new world. So it's been an interesting transition at Jagger. I know we're talking about asking the right questions. I find that most of the time you don't know if you've asked the right question until you get the answer. People just tend to ramble on about something that's completely not what you were hoping for. And then I guess rerouting, right? Like trying to get the conversation back on track is half the battle. So if anybody had any advice, maybe that's kind of where I was hoping to go is, you know, you talk to, and it's predominantly Zoom at this point, so it's really hard with body language, you know, asking what you thought was the right question and not getting the right answers.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add in here, I love this because sometimes you're like, well, where'd that come from? That answer. But also just for some context around where this topic came from, we had a conversation back in March as part of Get Your Shimmer On month for GWPP. And it was about being assertive versus being aggressive. And it really struck a chord with so many women that were told that they were being aggressive, but they were actually just trying to be assertive. And one of the themes that came up in that conversation was the ability to ask the right question. Because when you're asking a question, it kind of lowers those defenses. So it's fun, it's asking the right question, getting the right answer, but then it's also kind of this technique that we could use to help diffuse situations or make people more comfortable in the situation too. So any advice, like, have you had a situation where you're like, I asked a question, I got like a totally different answer, or went down a totally different path, and how did you rein it back in?
So I think, probably more so this year than ever, just because I think people are, working from home, being on video calls all the time. There's constantly IMs or emails. And so I do feel like being present in the conversation and having that consistently has been a really big challenge. And frankly, I don't think that's anything that's going to go away. I think even when we start to return to be in person, there's always going to be some element of not everyone's in the same room. And so when I get a off the wall response to one of my questions, I always just say, maybe I didn't phrase it correctly, but here's what I was really looking for, and trying to rephrase it and just asking the same question with maybe using different tone or a few different
Yes.
words, and maybe an example of what I'm looking for in a response, to try to redirect the conversation. But I think one of the things that I've had to get comfortable with in the last year is just not accepting the fact that I got an answer that I wasn't looking for or didn't address my question. So I think not being afraid to kind of repeat yourself in a different phrasing.
Yeah.
With emails and text as well, it's so easy to misinterpret the
Oh
tone.
gosh, yes.
So yeah, good to clarify.
My and my thoughts here are, let's try to reframe. Maybe you didn't ask the wrong question. You may get a gem of an answer out of it. You may get something that totally redirects your train of thought because they interpreted your question in a different way. Or maybe you asked it wrong, but you got like, oh, well, this was not information I was looking for, but I can use it. The other opportunity would be if, taking the temperature of the audience. Are they coming back at you because they feel like you're being aggressive? Are they giving you an emotional response? Kind of diffusing that with, active listening. I didn't really think about it that way. And your response makes me think of, a different question. And like Ashley mentioned, sort of reframing it and restructuring the question towards, okay, now I understand how this, I understand how this exchange is going to go. Let me ask in a different way, to gear it towards the response you want. So I would encourage us not to think, oh, I did it wrong.
Yeah, I love
and just
that.
say,
It's a great
okay,
point.
I don't know why I
Yeah.
have my positive hat on these days, but I know that when I feel like, oh, I was wrong, not thinking they didn't listen correctly or they didn't listen completely. We're in this place where we're always like, okay, it must be me. Maybe they were distracted by the pinging of everybody else.
Yes.
Or they
Yeah.
gave an emotional response, which is not what you intended. And it's because they just got a text message that said their credit card had been hacked and their husband is texting them like, hey, what's going on? And you're in the middle of a conversation and I can't
The
handle
dog's
this right now.
barking. The
The dog
dog's
is
barking.
growing up. Yeah.
The doorbell's ringing.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Water's boiling.
Yeah. That might have
on
been my
that
example.
note too, that I think sometimes I've been having more and more meetings in person, and I find that, I think like Sarah was saying too, the active listening, because I think some people just want someone in person to talk to right now for a minute before they answer the question. So it's like they're wasting time. They know they've got to answer the question and they might have an answer, but they really just want to talk about, I don't know, their credit card getting declined first, and then they're going to answer. So I think the active listening and the, making sure we're not blaming ourselves all the time, because that's a super easy fallback. And then gently redirecting, like, oh, I'm so sorry about that. How about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, for like, by asking that question, it comes up with all kinds of different creative ways that the conversation could go too. You're allowing that opportunity through asking that question. And just because you didn't get the exact answer that you were expecting, it could totally take you down a new idea or a new innovative path that you weren't expecting, or you learn something about that emotional response that someone's having and you're like, okay, what's going on here? I wasn't expecting that. And it allows you to dive in further. So just, it's that creative, I feel like it's a very creative process when you are using questioning versus making a lot of statements.
Yeah, and I think just asking one question at a time, because like you said, everybody's so unfocused when they're trying to focus, is like been a big key for me, at least, is just let's be as bare bones as possible. Let's get this one answer. I mean, especially in our world where you're really talking about 15 things at once with 17 different people, you got to break it down, because if you ask too many questions on a call or even in an email, goodness, don't put more than 2 questions in an email.
Or these bullet points.
Yeah, it's a lot of bullet points. Yeah, exactly.
Call them out.
Please answer this highlighted in yellow.
I think one of the things I'm hearing as we talk about this is the question of right and wrong is coming up when we're getting unexpected responses. So are we asking questions that we really think we know the answer to? And so when something different is coming back at us, it's catching us off guard. Maybe is there a different way to pose it, to actually state what you believe to be true, and then just check that with the person you're speaking with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's it's interesting, because sometimes I was just learning this the other day, where when you're in a conversation, I'm like a solver, so I always like to go into conversations trying to already have a solution for whatever's going on, even if someone doesn't even have a problem. I'm trying to solve a situation, typically. Not a good, healthy thing to do. So I actually did an exercise where I could only ask questions where I honestly was not trying to solve for the situation. And it was so hard to do. Like, it was asking a question to get further clarity and to help provide the support for the other person, but not trying to solve the situation for them. I like just try to do it in the next day or two and see how it goes. I like failed at it miserably. But I think, Paul, to your point, so often we're asking questions, so we think we're assuming we already know the answer, versus asking a question just to listen and to learn more.
Right. Out of genuine curiosity and the desire to learn from, what their perspective is. Yeah.
That's the power of silence. Just kind of letting people word vomit sometimes helps.
Well, and to your point, Paula, if you're asking a question you think you know the answer to, are you asking because you want them to validate you, to validate something you think you know, and sort of, check yourself? I do that a lot of times too, to be like, I'll ask a question making sure I understand what I'm doing, rather than saying, this is what I believe to be true. Are we aligned here? It's less risky, right? It's less of a risk for ourselves to ask a question rather than make a statement. This is what I believe is true. Tell me I'm wrong, because you don't want to be told I'm wrong. So we ask questions you already know the answer to. But it's effective when you use it as a response. So for me, if I get a response that feels emotional or aggressive towards me, I mirror it back and say, what I'm hearing you tell me, right? Because they're either being an ass or they don't know they're being an ass. And you can kind of diffuse that, that tone from the exchange by just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to reflect this back to you.
Yeah.
Anybody else went to conflict resolution counseling, or just me?
Helps everybody align, right? Like, I'm asking this because I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great way to preface it too. Yeah, I like
Maybe
that.
you can help me with this. I literally, just before we came on, got a message from this guy. So you know where it's going to go. And he's like, there's anything I can do to help, let me know. I'm an entrepreneur. We can certainly help each other outside the 9 to 5, right? And then he's like, when you're free for a quick touch base, maybe Friday night or Saturday. I'm like,
Whoa.
what? Like, what? Who does?
So in an email?
Yeah, in a LinkedIn message. And I'm like, is he just like, I don't know, is he coming on to me, or is he just like wanting to talk outside business hours? Either is inappropriate. But yeah, I'm like reading that going, I just don't understand that. Why do we have to help each other outside of business hours?
No.
That's a bit weird.
Trying to help you in different ways.
Yeah.
Testing boundaries.
Definitely. Doesn't want to cross my paths. An angry Scott is not worth messaging.
No. So I'm curious about something. Has anyone had a situation where asking questions backfired? Like where it actually escalated something that you weren't expecting, or did it make someone else uncomfortable? Or like even in a negotiation where you start asking a bunch of questions in procurement, are there times where we kind of like what we were just talking about, you should be making a statement versus asking a question? I'm a question asker naturally, so curious.
Well, I'm guilty.
Before we came on too. Sorry, Susan, go ahead.
No, on you go.
Just before we came on too, I was asking one of my project managers, I've got to go wire some money to, I don't know, Italy or something for some furniture. And I said, why does this have to be separate transactions at $65 a transaction, instead of just saying, this is going to, all this money is going as one, you know, it's not going separately. And I got so much blowback, but, oh, it's got to be individual because they're individual purchase orders. And it's like, dude, sorry, it's going in the notes section. And I rarely, I'm super rare because it feels weird to me, pull out, yeah, well, my name's on the door, and that's it. But I had to end the conversation. Sorry.
That does happen a lot in procurement, right? Because you're not pushing back, you're just asking for clarification. And because you're in your procurement silo, even though you have an idea of everything else that's going on, you've got the AP team being like, it has to be structured this way because of this. And like, okay, if there's a reason that we're all still learning, there's just plenty of opportunity out there. From my perspective, it didn't really make much sense.
Exactly.
Brenda, do you think if you would have made the statement right out of the gate saying it needs to be this way, that conversation would have gone a different direction, or by asking the question? Okay. Exactly.
I think I put the question out there and shouldn't have. I should have just said, well, I'm going to go and wire this money. Obviously, it's very important. And in the note section, I'll make sure that every invoice is listed individually, and left it at that instead of questioned, you know, why we're doing this, and leave it open.
It's super interesting because before this conversation, I never would have thought, like, am I diminishing myself in a conversation, kind of? And I don't want to call it that, but like by asking a question versus making a statement. I never really thought about that until now. What do you guys?
Well, I think there's a time and place to protect yourself by asking a question rather than making a statement. Not protect yourself, but better prepare yourself. If you're with an audience that you don't know how they're going to react or understand, I think questions are a good way to kind of read the room and learn who your audience is and get a feel for how bold they're willing to tolerate. And I think as women, we're at a disadvantage where we have to manage the room and temper ourselves. Or maybe that's just me. I will manage a room and I will temper myself based on the audience. I will go to the mechanic and cry wolf and, you know, do what I need to do to get what I need out of my mechanic, because that's how I get it done. I shouldn't have to, but it's
knowing your audience is half the battle.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a balance too. Oh, go ahead, Gabby.
Real quick, I was just gonna say, Sarah, your point is really interesting, because I initially thought of like, do we maybe purposefully ask questions where we're a little softer and we're not setting it up for the answer we're expecting because we are women and because we're catering to our audience. So interesting to hear I'm not alone in that. Go ahead.
It's a terrible thing for me to even recommend or encourage that we make ourselves small to make other people feel comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if that's on my path to success, until there's a big shift in the paradigm, I need to get things done. Okay. I need to get it done. This is how I can get it done. Until, you know, I'm credible in front of the audience, I have to establish my credibility, I guess.
Sarah,
Actually,
what I'm hearing you say is that you're trusting your gut in those situations and you're kind of going with it, right? Which makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. Ashley, you were going to say something too?
Yeah, I think, and I think it goes along with what Sarah and Gabby were saying, but overall, I think it's a balance, and it goes back to, I think, a comment we were making earlier about coming off as assertive versus aggressive. And so if you use a combination of questions and then make sure that you're making statements in balance with each other, I think we can avoid having that aggressive title added to us. But I think Sarah makes really good points. Like, we shouldn't have to change who we are or what our approach is just because we're women and could be labeled as aggressive, when, you know, males could probably do the same thing and it wouldn't, no one would bat an eye. So it definitely is a balance. And I think it's important, especially in today's world, to establish ourselves as, you know, not someone who's going to be walked all over, or make sure that we're being heard. And so I think just making sure we're using a balance of questions versus statements, I think helps make it that we're not coming across too aggressive, but also that we're not pushovers either.
Yeah, I
don't want to not be emotional. We don't want to be emotional.
And you don't want to, like, it's just like a self-protecting kind of force where you don't want to appear naive either. Like, you know, we all have experience where we all know what we're doing. We're here for a reason. And when you ask very minor questions that are probably very simple to a supplier, it helps to kind of build that establishment of, like, you already know what they do, but by giving them the opportunity to kind of flush it out and give you more details, you can kind of start to build on that. And I find that asking those really simple questions is sometimes hard, because I want them to understand that, you know, I am the professional, I know what I'm doing and I know where we're going. But you have to kind of establish that baseline, which is kind of sometimes awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned the simple questions, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. Like, even when if you're just saying, you know, can you tell me more about that? And try and steer it into what you're really looking for. It's a way that makes the person you're talking to feel heard, and let them take up some space to expand. Sometimes I think when we're in conversation, you know, I don't know about you, but I try and make it as quick and as efficient as I can. And I don't allow myself enough time to really expand as much as I might like. So maybe that's an opportunity as well. When you're asking a question, allow it that time to expand, and maybe that's an opportunity to open things up with just a simple question.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed leaders in your lives that are just really, really great questioners. Like, they just know when to ask the right question at the right time. And it totally sets them apart. So Paula, you know, Megan Wilson. Megan Wilson is like amazing at that. She was one of our leaders that we both know, but I had a leader once who always played dumb in meetings. And I call it that. He never said that, but he always played dumb in meetings, and he would go in and he would ask the really simple questions to start with. And he would lead up and get a better understanding and make sure that you were heard and that you could explain what was going on. And then he would start drilling into the tougher ones. And it's like his rhythmic routine of, I could just expect Mark every meeting to come into that meeting and ask the basic questions, act dumb to lead up to the more robust ones. And but everyone always felt heard. It was a great way to collaborate. It was a great way to share perspectives. And I'll never forget it. I have no idea if he knew that he was doing it strategically, but he always did. So do you guys have examples of leaders who just were able to open the doors and through questioning, and how did they do that?
I had a very similar experience, Amanda. I've had a boss who literally would come into a meeting and say, listen, I'm sorry, but I'm a slow learner. Can we just take it back to the basics and start from the beginning? And he was a VP, so like, and he would literally say, I'm not very smart. I'm a slow, like, it was just humor to lighten and open the conversation.
Yeah. And it made you feel comfortable. Like to me, it made everyone in the, so how are we doing that as women leaders? Like, are we walking into a room and making everyone feel comfortable and allowing ourselves to learn along the way through this questioning? How can we apply that in our lives?
I think while I'm thinking about this and listening to everyone, it sounds like these leaders are great facilitators. You think about going into a strategic planning workshop and the way somebody who's, an expert at that facilitates a conversation to get everyone in the room to jump in and contribute. They lay that foundation and take that back seat of, I don't know what's going on here. I need everyone to tell me. So I'm wondering if that is just a tactic of a strong facilitator, which is a great leadership quality, to be able to make sure everyone, is perceived as having a voice.
Yeah.
So we're not manipulative with our tactics. We're facilitating. We're not making everyone feel comfortable. We're facilitating.
I like that.
Yeah, and everybody has something
like that
to share, right? So like, right now, as a procurement specialist, as a new procurement specialist for Jagger, which they've never had before, all of our stakeholders were typically the supplier relationship holder. And so I'll get all that background information from our stakeholder to say, okay, how has the relationship been going? What does the supplier provide to us? And then I'd get that introduction to the supplier and just let them have the floor as well. So I'm kind of getting both sides of the coin. It's been a really great neutral space to gather that information from, and just letting everybody just give me as much information as possible, because if you're in that room, you have something to say.
I was just going to say, you have to be yourself as well. Don't try and please everybody in the room, read the room, but don't try and be friends with everybody. Try and get your message across in a way that hits everybody.
Susan, you do a remarkable job at that. What techniques do you use in making sure that you find that right balance?
So I think it's over the course of the last few years, I've become more confident in my skills and my abilities. And so I don't have to hide behind showy, boaty stuff. I can go in and just talk about what I need to talk about. But I also like to have fun. So I throw that in because I enjoy that. It's fun for me. That's why I do it. And I'm quite lucky. The people I work with, they all kind of know what they're getting into before they come and work with me, because they've seen me on LinkedIn. So, it works well because, I kind of, without even trying, I'm vetting them, because they all come to me when they're ready with something, which is quite nice. But I do think sometimes I still occasionally have calls with software companies, and it's mostly, it's always men who try to tell me what to do and run my business, and I try to get a bit argumentative, but I probably don't speak up as much as I should. But then they're just not worth the energy. I'll just let them have their platform and then say thank you and goodbye. I've only been doing this for 4 years. I don't need your advice, thanks.
Especially like meeting new suppliers, like only via Zoom calls. I've found that if you interact with I don't know, could just be me, but a woman, that we would have about 10 minutes of get to know you. Where are you located? Is that your home? Are you in the office? And sometimes with men, it's really just let's talk about working and get out the door. And for me, I need to set up I need to know who you are a little bit. I mean, I would do that in person. So I think the added, filter of a Zoom call just makes that like even more difficult.
It's weird actually, because I've had this client for a year now, and we have got on so well just over Zoom, like men, women. And I'm actually I'm going up to London to meet some of them tomorrow for the first time. So it's like, will it be the same? Will it be different? So it'd be really interesting to find out, because we've built that whole relationship based on Zoom.
Everyone looks a little different in person.
Yeah. I'm even more full on.
Actually, Susan, it was funny. I met somebody over Zoom, and we actually went and had lunch the other day, and it was the first time we ever met in person. And she went like this, and kind of, and I was like, and she goes, "You are much bigger." She meant taller, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Much bigger than I expected. I was like,
I said that to them. I said, I bet I'm the shortest in the group when we meet, because we're all eye level now. And actually, I think ages ago I did a post about it. Like, do people treat you differently because you're eye level on Zoom? Like, is it different when people are looking up or down to people in in-person meetings?
I think so. I'm almost 6 feet, and Zoom call is a whole nother level. And I usually wear a little bit of a heel when I'm in the office, kind of a power move, but it makes me feel confident. And so, like, taking that away from me, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm barefoot right now, but it like just brings a different level of energy.
Well, it's funny. I mean, honestly, I just met Gabby and Hannah, a couple of weeks ago. Gabby flew into RTP and we got together, and then we went and had dinner with whoever was, kind of in the RTP area in the marketing department. And, quite a few of them I'd only dealt with on Zoom calls, much like you. And I'm tall too, Kathy. And so that was the funny takeaway was, who realized Debbie was so tall? I'm not as tall as you, but I was like, that's just so funny. I mean, you have a completely different perspective of them. And I mean, that could be a whole nother conversation.
Literally. Yeah.
How things are changing.
yes.
Yeah.
Gabby was as cute as I thought she'd be, though. So was Hannah. But it's not. It is nice. And Susan, I'll have to say that, meeting them in person and having the continuity still in the relationship is always it's so nice.
Yeah. Well, we've just had our last bit of lockdown extended for another 4 weeks, so there's not going to be many meetings. So I'm going to make the most of it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wear a pretty mask.
Oh, I have got I've got a Scotland mask, I've got flower, I've got a Wonder Woman mask.
I love it.
I'm not quite sure what I'm going to go for tomorrow yet.
Amanda, you were asking about strategies earlier, and I mean with supplier negotiations, it always really sometimes depends. It does for me at least depend on my audience and what we're actually trying to purchase and how long we've been engaged. And if a brand new supplier is a whole different world than a supplier you've been engaged with, or the company's been engaged with for 15 years that might not be performing. So for me, a lot of it is knowing that our suppliers are eager to sell, especially now, right? Like with the whole year have gone by of people trying to lock it down and not, make any further purchases. One of the biggest questions that I love to ask that helps kind of spark fire, lots of word vomit, as I like to say, is what am I not asking that I should be? Because I know what I want, they know what they want to sell, but there may be smaller components that they could sell to me. I might not be interested, but it might impact how, the conversation changes. So it's COVID, very much COVID impacted, but it seems to help a lot.
So you literally asked that question during the conversation.
Yeah. What am I not asking? Because you don't know what you don't know.
Awesome.
As cliche as that is.
Yeah.
Well, and it opens all kinds of doors. We actually, with one of my clients right now, we're going through a change initiative and we're interviewing 35 to 40 people.
Wow.
And just to get their feedback on, we're still 6 months, 8 months before the actual start of the implementation of this technology. But we're going through 14 questions with them, and we get to the end where we say, what question are we not asking that we should have? But just by going through and having the conversation and asking people, how is this going to impact you? What has worked in the past? What hasn't worked in the past? What do you believe the biggest risk is? What are you fearful of? Like all of these questions, and then you get to the end and they're like, I am so glad that you took the time to actually stop and get a perspective. Like, just by asking 14 questions, it's like changing the game as we're approaching this change. But when you get to that last question around what haven't we asked, then it's just like, yeah, there's like all kinds of different ways that it can go. And it's amazing, like all the feedback and the advice that you can get, and and that's like where you actually get what people are really worried about typically when you ask that question. So yeah, just a different way of applying it in a change situation with your own team. Right. Yeah. So what other, I know Ashley, you had, or Ashley, I'm looking at Ashley. Anyone else have any like situations where they've worked with change internally or with a supplier where you used a line of questioning or a particular question that works really well?
I think something that I've done, and I think it goes back to my project management days, where you're ending any sort of interaction or meeting, and it will always be like a great place for me to say, okay, here's what I understand from the conversation. And then at the end, I think it's a similar approach, but it's just, what else am I missing? And so it gives everyone an opportunity to say, okay, here's what we're going to go and do. If anyone doesn't agree, it gives them an opportunity to speak up at the end before everyone adjourns. Because if you're kind of doing a recap via notes or anything like that afterwards, I feel like people feel like it's after the fact, and so they're more hesitant to respond to things. Whereas if you're still in that group setting, it's a way to just give everyone one last opportunity to speak up and add their input.
Love that. One technique that someone taught me a while back was when you go into a meeting with a supplier, with a new sales contact, or whoever is new team member, you can use the words "before we get started," and then ask them some questions about themselves, about, like, to get them to know them more. And it, for some reason, it like makes it so much more casual to say, before we get started, and then it's like, it's off the record. And then, so it's kind of that same technique, like it's like only you're doing it at the end to kind of wrap up, but it's worked wonders to break down the barriers and make people more comfortable of just that one little phrase.
I love that, because you always hear about, you want to do business with people that you like. And I know, even being in procurement, we're supposed to, have a very non-biased approach. But I have supplier meetings where I'm meeting someone for the first time, and I'm like, I have to fight my internal struggle to say, okay, I'm probably being too hard on them because I don't like them, not necessarily because they're not fitting their requirements. But it's so true. And so I think just breaking down that barrier at the beginning of the meeting helps make sure that you start off on a more personal path. And so therefore you're more likely to make a deal that both people are happy with.
Yep, absolutely.
Especially when you're doing like an RFP and you're talking to multiple suppliers and kind of already have your heart set on one of them.
Exactly.
You're a little harder on the one where you're like, you can do better. It's hard to take that personal bias out of pushing or leaning into one supplier and pushing the other one away.
I heard a really good ice-breaking question this week, and it was somebody who, when they were starting a new project or meeting at the beginning of what would be a big meeting with their team, she would ask, "What are you proud of?" And they would do a roundtable to bring everyone into, a different state of mind, and a positive one. So I thought that was a really interesting way to shift perspective, because when you're coming into a conversation, sometimes you're bringing in a lot of, energy and weather with you that you may not realize. So just taking that minute to check in, and then the before we get started space, you know, to get to know somebody a little bit more on a different level. It opens the possibilities for some different questions that aren't related to the topic at hand.
Yeah, that's fabulous. And especially, I was just on a meeting the other day where someone came into the meeting and just like started coming after me, like totally aggressive, totally not what this person typically does. And then I found out that he was having something going on personally that he was trying to work through at that same moment. And it just totally, like, I wish I would have known, like going into that, like asking the questions up front to say, you know, how's your day going? Or, you know, whatever, just to set up the conversation more appropriately. So I didn't get like lambasted right out of the gate.
Yeah, just today, he does telephone sales training courses. And he said, you know, when you phone up someone and they tell you to F off, don't take it personally. They're probably having a worse day than you. So actually just be glad you're not the person on the other end of the phone. Yeah. You know, but it's really hard, you know, because your first knee-jerk reaction is, oh my God, it's something I've done. And then you have to be like, nope, there could be a whole range of reasons.
Yeah. Right.
And that factors into like asking the questions and getting questioned. As a unique thing for women, I'm currently making a human and I have baby brain that I constantly am apologizing for. So you just, you know, perspective is everything. You gotta remember, everybody's coming, oh gosh, you're right, the weather. I mean, even when it's just rainy and it's been raining for 3 days and you're just home and you're staring at the window, like it's exhausting and can't help it sometimes.
Someone told me once that it was great advice. They said, whenever you're in a situation like that, just remember that most of the time people are thinking about themselves, not about you.
Yeah.
And I was like, like you go into a situation where someone's aggravated and you automatically think, oh my gosh, they're aggravated at me, when in reality, they're probably aggravated about something going on in their own lives. So how do you work through that situation? It was just like such an eye-opening, especially going into negotiations, going in like, okay, so the supplier, you know, it obviously is incentivized to do something, right? To make their commission, to make the sale, whatever it might be. And so in those tense situations during a negotiation, possibly, it's like, okay, I have to remember that it's not about me, it's about him. Like it's about her, it's about the other person across the table, and what are they thinking? What is their perspective? And how do I draw that out through the right questions?
Yeah, and I think it's so much more important to have that before we get started conversation now than ever, because we're not in the same place. You don't know that somebody just got like a text about something crazy going on because they're not at the desk next to you. They're possibly states away in a different room, and you're just seeing them on a Zoom call. So you're not, you know, if somebody comes in heated, it's probably nothing to do with you.
Well, that goes back to one of my favorite quotes, and I have to, with different variances, but, you know, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And I think this is a really important time because, like you said, we're just seeing the surface. You know, even on social media, we're just seeing the surface. And I'm constantly having to tell my kids and whatnot that, you know, you don't know why they're upset. It could be some of the reasons that Gabby mentioned, and usually it is nothing to do with you. So you've got to learn how to read the room and tread lightly, but, you know, still do what you have to do. But I love that quote.
You know, it's funny. I got the same advice, Amanda, when I was a teenager, and I took it to heart so much that now I don't realize when people are actually upset with me. And I just assume that they're venting about something else until they go, it's you. This is about you. And I'm like, oh, you're mad at me? Oh, that's a whole different conversation then.
That's an interesting twist.
Totally flip it on its head. Just wait until it's actually about you.
Right.
Well, yeah. And then it's like a light bulb. My husband gets aggravated at me for that. Sometimes he's like, no, it's like, this is good. Feedback. Oh, okay, if you're telling me you're giving me feedback, I got it.
And it's not just related, to build on that, even when you send something out to a person, message, text, phone them, and they don't answer, it's easy to make up stories about why they're not getting back to you. And maybe that affects your readiness and ability to follow up when you normally would. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
There's a Brene Brown book that's all about that. And I can't remember the name of that one, but she wrote it for her husband. And it's the exercise they started doing is, you're not answering me, so this is what I think is happening in my head. This is what's happening. And then they have to answer each other. It was fascinating because I have all these conversations with people in my head all the time that they are not involved in. And sometimes I get in really big arguments with people that have no idea.
That's me. Or multiple different scenarios as well. How do you play out? Yeah.
And you do go back into it heated, and it is them for something that's on your head.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta get out of your head sometimes. It's nice out here.
Well, and I always love the preconceived notion that if you're not calling back, or you're not answering the phone, that you're trying to avoid them in some way. When quite honestly, I have people that pick up the phone that are in some type of an awful mood. I'm like, if you're in an awful mood, or if you're busy, like, don't pick up the telephone, please. Like, I completely get it, but some people are just offended. Friends and parents included, kids. But also people, the people at work and professionals, suppliers and vendors I deal with. I mean, most people try to take the high road on that, but sometimes you can just tell.
Yeah.
I love Brene Brown, by the way.
I love
that.
that.
It's easier to draw the line of like work mode to home mode when you're not in your home all day.
Yeah, I miss being able to come home and like change your clothes and like become you.
Turn it off.
Or that half an hour drive home, like where you could just decompress and leave it away and then not bring it back. Yeah. Do miss
and
those
swear
days.
in the car or sing in the car.
Car concert.
Car concert. Love
Just
it. Well,
roll your windows down.
So just to wrap it up here, this was very insightful. I'm so glad that all of you were able to join today. Kathy, thank you so much for moderating. Everyone from Jagger, your sponsorship of these conversations is so appreciated. Knowing that we can come together as women in procurement, whether you're a practitioner or supporting procurement in some way, and have this conversation about how to ask questions, when to ask questions, when is it appropriate, how are we using them? It's just been so insightful. So very, very grateful for all of your insights today. We do have these once a month. So what we do is once you join one, you'll just get an invite to the next one with the login on your calendar. So you don't have to register every single time. So you'll know when the next one is coming up, which is great. And it saves you a step from having to register each and every time. So look forward to the invite and the next
Share it with your
conversation.
friends.
Yeah,
Share it with your friends.
Share it with your friends.
With posts and stuff, like
make the
just
conversation
tag me in it.
bigger.
Yep.
Much appreciated, everyone.
Yeah,
Have a great Tuesday.
Have a great
Awesome.
day.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you next month.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.